Well, thank you for joining me this morning. It's I think it was Cristiano in my community that first tagged me in one of your posts about 5 months ago or something, and it was you that then tagged Dean Burnett in the one when I was looking for a neuroscientist, and I ended up with Dean Burnett on the show as a result. So I owe you a great big thank you for that as well, because I was like, he's too big, he will never say yes.
Yes.
So thank you for 2 thank yous to start us off, really. But
all right.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself, because what I know you of is I know you through initially Twitter, because they've all begin with a T now. It's hard to remember which one it is. Originally through Twitter, read a few of your blogs, then found the TikTok. Absolutely love the TikTok. But like my description of you would be like, you're an ADHD content creator, but I'm sure there's way more to it than that. So how would you introduce yourself?
I don't know, I'm just making it up as I go along, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to be like my age and talk about being a content creator, because that's kind of new lingo. You know, like it's the sort of thing you'd feel insulted by 10 years ago. Like if you're a writer and someone says you make content, that's like, sorry, what? No, I have a profession, thank you, and a skill set. But yeah, I mean, I think that's broadly right. I talk about ADHD mainly. That's where I started with, because that's the first thing I realized that I was, and then more recently autism, and I'm trying to be more open and honest as well about anxiety, depression, and an eating disorder, actually, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which is very common amongst ADHD and autistic people.
Mm. So when did you kind of when were the first suspicions that, you know, of any of these conditions for you?
It was last year. Basically, I was tricked into taking a test, an online test for ADHD by a friend of mine, who knows how competitive I am. So he told me his score, and then he sent me the test, and I scored ridiculously highly. Surprise, surprise. Which is funny because, you know, I never really, part of the reason I talk about this, or I felt compelled to talk about it, was I was angry that never even crossed my mind that it might be a possibility for me. Yeah. Because the knowledge about it, the understanding about it is woeful.
Yeah. I mean, I've not got a formal diagnosis yet. However, I've taken a few of those online tests and also scored very highly. And the issue for me was always the whole, well, how much does it impact your life? It's like, well, and I'm like, it doesn't really. It doesn't impact my life that right now I'm underneath here playing with this thing. It doesn't impact my life that there's about 16 other things on my desk that I could do that with. But then I started realizing that actually what I've always put down to creativity in the past is like, okay, I don't have the creativity today. My creativity is either there or it's not. And that's why I kind of stitched with the one about executive dysfunction, because it's obviously like the difference between procrastination and executive dysfunction. You know, it's like you can't even. You said, you know, procrastination is doing any. How did you define it on the video? Because you'll say it better.
So procrastination is doing anything other than the thing that you don't want to do. It's looking for a distraction.
Yeah.
Executive dysfunction is not being able to do the thing you want to do, no matter how desperately. And that's the difference, because there's an element of choice to procrastination, and there are reasons why you might procrastinate more in trauma and anxiety, and, you know, it's not necessarily a healthy choice. But executive dysfunction, there is no choice. You literally don't have the capacity to do something, and it's important to understand the distinction between those two things, because, you know, if you're living a life thinking, oh God, I can't get anything done, I'm always procrastinating, you know, that's a guilt and shame feeling.
Yeah.
But if you have no choice over the matter, those are not feelings you should be feeling about that situation. And I think we all feel enough guilt and shame anyway.
Yeah, it's one of the most common phrases on our channel is you don't guilt yourself into greatness. It's like the guilt itself makes you totally go and do the thing. It's like no, now you're not doing the thing and you're feeling terrible about it at the same time, and the whole cycle just continues. So after you into ADHD, or to anyone like might be in a position like you were in where never really thought about it before, what are some of the things that are on that test that people could look out for and maybe potentially do one of these tests themselves and maybe go speak to a doctor?
God. I don't know, mate. I haven't got a memory. That test has been and gone. No. In terms of like an online test, or
well, okay, if they're not with a test, but like let's say, what would be some of the things that you'd say to a person to kind of look out for in their own kind of daily behaviour or their own feelings?
I think just a general level of distraction and forgetfulness is like, for me, what's like most present. But of course, because that is an executive dysfunction, that's an executive function, working memory. Although, that is common in depression as well. So for example, I could forget I was making dinner halfway through making dinner. Like it would be on, something would call to me and I'd walk into another room and then, oh no. I think a general, it's difficult. So, because for me, the last sort of 5 or 6 years before thinking about this, I feel like I was just sort of shut down emotionally. So a lot of people talk about emotional dysregulation, and I'm only really starting to deal with that this year, because I think a defense mechanism of mine was to switch it off. And now I'm being very deliberately open about myself. So it's odd. It's odd. Have you seen that It's Always Sunny quote? Like, feeling emotions like you did when you were a kid. That's how it feels to me. Not quite a child, but oh yeah, these are things that happen to adults. In terms of daily life, it's so hard. I think not being able to do things that you want to do is, for me, a primary experience of this cycle of, let's say you've got something to do, you've got a deadline, and you can't start it, and you feel bad about that, and you feel guilty about that, but the deadlines are way off, and you've always done this, and you get away with it, don't you?
Yep.
And then it continues, and that pressure just builds and builds to the point where you literally hit crisis, and you fix your executive dysfunction because there are now no longer any options. Your brain has to do it. It's like a waterfall, and then you get everything done. You get 3 weeks worth of work done in 6 hours because
Yep. I know it well.
that was basically the function of my professional life for literally everything. And it's not a fun way to live. Like, you basically you're going from anxiety to crisis as a loop. So if that speaks to you, I imagine there's something you should look into. It might not be ADHD. There are lots of overlaps, but yeah, that for me is like.
Yeah, I mean, my diagnosis was with bipolar disorder, and again, I always kind of attributed the two to this. That it's in that when I'm feeling elevated, I can smash through 3 weeks worth of work in 6 hours. When I'm feeling excuse me. And I'd literally be like, oh, I've got all this work to do, like, as in the creative side of it. I never had a really problem doing the stuff where someone expected me to turn up and such. It was the independent work, like, so, you know, things like writing, making videos. Doing a stream's been easier because they expect me at a certain time. So that's been easier. But I used to always attribute it to that, as like the idea that, but that exact thing of like literally leading it right the way up until the deadline. I realized that I was doing that probably about 10 years ago. Well, I've been doing it since forever, but I realized I was doing it. And going back to what you said before about like the shame, the only thing that's changed for me now is that I kind of accept that I'm going to do that. So instead of worrying about it and letting that anxiety build up for like the 2 weeks until that's up, I'm just like, right, well, I'll give myself permission to sit and play a game when I should be working. The word should, it's virtually banned in my community. We can only say the word should to talk about how we can't say the word should, basically. And that's kind of like, this goes back to that, how much does it impact your life? Because I'd sort of found a productivity hack, workaround type thing for that most of the time. But it's been this thing recently where I'll be like, oh, I've got all this client work to do, I've got this to do, I've got appointments, like stuff that I need to do with my kids. And that's when all the ideas come. And I'm like, I can't wait to go. I cannot wait. I've got Friday afternoon off. On Friday afternoon, I'm going to get all of this done. And I'm going to sit at the computer and just stare. And then it's always been hard to know, actually, does the depression side of things cause that? Or does that feeling of not being able to do the things that I want to do cause the depression? And learning about executive dysfunction was one of those things that I'm like, yeah, like there are those days when I am procrastinating, and I know I'm just procrastinating, and I know that if I say to myself 20 more minutes on the game, set a timer, come off the game on 20 minutes, and then I feel like a full-on productive badass, you know. But yeah, it is kind of, so it is kind of it is about learning those differences, you know, learning actually what is the difference between when I physically can't do it or when I actually am just avoiding it. There's one of my favorite quotes ever from any interview I've ever done it was a poker coach, and he basically said the most important thing that he's transferred from poker coaching to mental health was to learn to be acutely aware of the things that are within your control and the things that aren't. And I think that, like, the more we can learn about that in any condition, really, it's like, okay, because we can only take responsibility really for the things that are in our control, and the things that aren't in our control, then really trying to take responsibility for that in that moment just leads to frustration and leads to shame.
Yeah, 100%. So I think about the sort of locus of control idea a lot, which, you know, broadly I don't like, because there's only 3 of them, and I think humans are a bit more complex than 3 boxes. But yeah, I think people tend to fall into the extremes when they've been dealing with mental health or sort of neurodivergence, especially undiagnosed neurodivergence, I think, because you're socialized as a neurotypical person. Yeah. So not only do you have all the ableist socialization that everyone has, because we live in a world that is ableist, but you are also taught to believe that you are not disabled because you don't know, and so you have sort of extra hang-ups, I think, if you don't know from childhood. Although I imagine there is a different experience if you know from childhood. I don't want to be absolutionist. But yeah, so I think a lot of people in those situations end up with very strong locuses of control, taking responsibility for things that absolutely are not in their power or control. And some people go absolutely the other way and see the world as a thing that happens to them that they have absolutely no power over. And it's trying to find your way to the middle.
Oh yeah. That was my entire goal in 2020, by the way. It was my years have themes. This year's theme is proactive mental health care. So treating your mental health care as a multivitamin rather than a painkiller. So you do the self-care before you burn out, which
that sounds nice.
It does, doesn't it? I'll let you know if I achieve it. I'm getting better, but last year's goal actually was theme was not them and us, but all of us, because even though I talk about mental health all the time, the name isn't Mental Health by Dave, it's Mindset by Dave, because that was, I came from being a personal trainer, and then I got obsessed with habit change, and then I moved into the how do we get people to not, I was interested in the people's nutrition, people's exercise, but I was more interested in the how do you get them to do this, because. And the locus of control, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, it basically means it's where, I didn't even know there's 3 of them. So it's where does the control lie? It's like, do I have control over this situation, or is this situation out of my control? Was the kind of 2-ish, I suppose, that I knew. And you'd constantly be kind of finding that if someone feels it's completely and utterly out of their control, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if someone totally, like you said, feels like it's 100% in their control, that's great when that person's riding high. I did this, I'm self-made, I'm blah blah blah. But when that person's not doing so well, I'm doing everything within my power right now, and it's just not working. It's like, so it must be me. I must be doing something wrong, and now I feel worse about it, and now I don't want to actually do the stuff in the first place. But oh god, my train of thought's gone. See, there it goes. But out the window. There was a point to all of that. Oh yeah, the theme of last year, which was, and you know what I found? I found that everybody got angry with me. Like the people on this side, the people that were, yes, you can control, you can take control of your life. They got angry with me because I'm like saying, yeah, you can in a lot of situations, but let's factor it in for individuals, and let's accept that the difficulty of things isn't set in stone. Like the difficulty from the difficulty to make your bed is not the same for a happy person and a depressed person. It's not the same for a tidy person or a person who has literally never formed the habits of being tidy. I'm not even going to call them a messy person. It's not the same. So they didn't like that, and then the side that were like the okay not to be okay side, which I'm way more towards their side than I am to this side, which is very hard to be as a habit change coach. But they were all like, but you're not accepting us. I'm like, I'm totally and utterly accepting you. I wrap it up in the serenity prayer. Give me the serenity to accept the things that I can't change, the strength to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. That's what I kind of wrap it up into. But being in the middle, well, there's still a piece of content to be made on this. Being in the middle, we're told that's sitting on the fence. Right. The way I see it, instead of like, here's a fence between 2 fields, I'm like, here's a field between 2 fences. It's like there's so many different ideas, and the people actually that are on the edges of these, they're the ones that are sitting on the fences.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with control, so you've got external, you've got strong external, and then in the middle you've got you've got external, strong internal, and in the middle is internal.
Right. And
that's the problem with the categorizations, because it makes strong internal sound like it's better than internal.
Yeah.
It's not. It's internal is what you want, and it's being able to take responsibility for the things that you are actually responsible for, and not for the things that you aren't responsible for, and being able to identify them. That is the right way to be.
In that case, it needs to be renamed external, internal, balanced.
Yeah, you'd think, right?
So, when you started writing about this, what was the response you got?
Oh, mate, I mean, it was so weird. like, because initially I was just, typing on Twitter, and you find people and a community, and that was an incredible experience. I didn't understand that communities existed on Twitter. Like I'd been on Twitter for, it's actually my 4-year anniversary on Twitter. But I went on Twitter just for work. Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Clearly, I was not feeling very, very good about myself 4 years ago. But I'd never really used it. Like a few hundred people followed me in that time. And then finding these people and curating my feed and turning it into this like actual resource full of people that share an experience and are educating each other on it was kind of crazy. And then I made a thing about ADHD writing styles. It's a little meme thing.
That was one of the first ones I read, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's still my pinned tweet. But that went crazy. And yeah, so it was overwhelmingly positive in the first instant. I think because I used to be a comedian, because I am a writer, I think I can distill things well and communicate ideas well. But that thing was crazy in response.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of comeback on that of that's not ADHD.
Yeah, so it's funny. So a Twitter friend of mine sort of worked out what happened essentially with that, because it was overwhelmingly positive for a long time, and then I say a long time, I mean like 3 days, but 3 days on Twitter is
it's
like
a long time.
Eternity. Right?
Yeah.
And then basically a very famous woman with who is ADHD but is not popular amongst ADHD people retweeted it.
Oh.
And that's when I started getting all the like hot take reactions. It's like, oh, I see. This isn't about what I've said or even about ADHD. This is your hatred of this woman, which made it easier to deal with, to be honest. But by that point, I'd already written my blog. So,
So have you found that, like, what other things in your life has it helped you make sense of?
Making sense, like it's so difficult because it sort of makes sense of everything, right? But one of the things it's allowed me to do is to open the door to a level of self-compassion that I did not have before. Because when you don't know, those things that can be disrupted by executive dysfunction, whatever your professional life, those not being able to stick to a hobby, like, or whatever, which you can also feel guilt and shame over. Before you know, those things are reasons to hate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know, you can go, oh, that is why I do that. And you can let yourself off the hook a bit. Like now I'm like, oh, I'm going to have random mad hobbies and interests for the rest of my life. I'm never going to stick to one thing and become the master at it. And that's actually kind of cool. It's allowed me to reframe that. Like, because I think now about, if you could take a pill and get rid of it, I wouldn't. Like all the stupid experiences that I've had, all the collection of skills that I've got, the idea of living a life where that won't continue, where I won't, when I die, have twice as many skills as I do now. I don't want that,
Yeah. I mean, I do the exact same. Like I've picked up. I mean, one of the things that I was juggling. I'm sat here playing with a Christmas pud juggling ball right now. But like I picked that up for a little bit, loved it, and I've found there to be benefits to that. The benefits that being is that when you Apart from it was like the one that nearly did me in was archery, because I nearly spent a few grand on archery equipment, and thankfully I had a really bad experience on the last lesson when I was using the loaned stuff. There was the guy corrected me on every shot, like didn't let me get a few shots off, and then to question it, he just basically corrected me on every shot, and by the end of it I'm like, I can't stand this anymore, and I was like this close to like signing up for membership and all the rest of it. But it's like, do you get that thing when you start something new and you fall in love with it, and you get all that kind of amazing emotion and that feeling? It's like, oh, I'm never going to get bored of this, and then you do, but then you find something else and you fall in love with that, and it's like, and the thing is, when you do stick at something, like that rise plateaus for people, and they fall out of love with things, and then they fall back in love with it, and they fall out of love with it, and they fall, like, it's like, the thing is, actually, if you get to that plateau, it's seen within society as being this big amazing thing to push through the plateau. And yeah, sure, if you want to be the best at, you know, every time I say the best, be the best, I can't help but nearly break into the Pokemon theme tune. But even if you want to be the very God, I can't get rid of it. It's there worse than ever right now. If you want to be awesome, there we go, something, yes, okay, you have to break through those plateaus. But it's this the expression, a jack of all trades is a master of none. There's an extra part to that's cut off. I don't know if you're aware. Yeah, you can tell it you are. You know, but it's usually better than most, or something is the rest half of it, or something.
Yeah, it's master of none, but it's better than one, I think.
Yeah. So it's like, it's, you know, for me, music is like, I've loved it my entire life, but I played the piano to a certain level. I'm not fantastic, but I've played 3 of my friends down the aisle on the piano. You know, it's like, I never got like a job as a pianist. So I've just gone to pianist now, obviously. But and the same with guitar, you know, I still do love playing that, and I never got to the level that I wanted to with it. But I've played at weddings. I now occasionally break out into song on stream, and we have a good laugh and stuff. So these things are never gone. Like, you know, then, like, and you can always go back to them at some point as well. Like the skills that you've actually learned when you've obsessively jumped into a new hobby for a short space of time. What are some of the other misconceptions then that society makes, where there, you know, like, so we've talked about procrastination. You know, people are called that person potentially lazy when really they've got executive dysfunction. What are some of the other things that society are kind of seeing, which really can be explained by neurodiversity?
I think sort of almost everything. Like, if we let's hark back to a conversation I can't divulge fully, but it was recently said to me that you know, everybody wants to do things that they're interested in, and it's like, yeah, they do, but not everybody is completely bloody incapable of doing something that there is no value in. Like, we feel that times 10. It is not a mild preference. It's how our nervous system works. So that is, I think, quite an important thing to be aware of, especially if you're in the world of, you know, any sort of work, which most people are, unfortunately. But I think as well, you know, this idea of ADHD is, I think the cultural perception of it is this, you know, annoying 10-year-old boy disorder.
Yeah.
You know, there's no idea that it's there are 3 different types. It can present in multiple different ways. And actually something I read during my research was that, like, only 25% of, like, young boys actually present that way as well. Which is really interesting. So it's a condition defined by the most annoying traits that adults find in children.
Yeah.
Which is not like a super useful thing if you're an adult trying to communicate it to people. And this idea of interior hyperactivity, I think is something that people don't understand. You know, they think of hyperactivity as climbing the walls. They don't. Neurotypical people who don't have those experiences, I don't think, can imagine what it is like to be able to burn yourself out sat on the sofa looking like you're doing nothing. That is something I wish more people knew about. That, like, actually, no, I just can't talk right now, but you've been doing nothing. I know, but like, my brain's been doing a lot.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Yeah, exactly. You've been doing nothing. My brain's been doing a lot. Would you say that if someone sat playing chess, they're doing nothing, you know? And I can't remember. It's some ridiculous number of calories that a chess player burns in an hour, like at a high level. And it's because, our brain's one of the most energy, what's the word? Hungry, I suppose. I've not got good words today. And I've got compassion about myself about that now. I used to. Historically, I would have proper beat myself up in the middle of an interview if my brain did a fart or whatever. And that's been something that actually my stream community have really helped me with, because I basically say to them, about not shaming themselves and not putting themselves down. So as a result, now I have to live by example, so that's quite good. But yeah, it's that's the whole thing, is like, you've been doing nothing. It's like, I've not been doing nothing though. It's like, if I'm in a bipolar low, if I'm stuck in depression, I was stuck in depression for the whole of Monday, and half of Tuesday, and I wasn't doing nothing that time. I was I was exhausting myself by the perpetual cycle of thoughts that was going on inside of my own head. The perpetual beating myself up that I have much less control over when depression is present than I do when it's not present. And this is it. It's like, I suppose it is. It's about I suppose communicating that and helping people to understand that, really, so that they see, oh yeah, well, this person might need a bit of extra space there, might need a bit of extra time. In terms of kind of what you've researched and stuff, is there any better ways that we could be like help? If anyone's, like, for example, got kids with ADHD, is there any, or friends with ADHD, is there any better ways that we could be treating these people than how we are now?
I think ADHD is a shame disorder. That is not what it is, if you know what I mean. But you basically have that if you're ADHD. So if you've got kids who are ADHD, like, my first advice would be to also get tested for ADHD and autism, because comorbid and genetic and heritable, so it might help you understand yourself better. But also, I read basically ADHD children receive something like 20,000 more negative reinforcements before, like, the age of 10 or something. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember the actual research paper than the average child, and I think that's where a lot of issues with self-worth can come from, because a lot of those behaviors are deemed unacceptable, or so without understanding, you can be telling kids off for things that they really can't control, and whilst they might still develop into adults who have careers and whatever, I'm telling you now, it's not all going to be healthy in the head. You're building a framework for them to not trust themselves, I think, and to believe their own experiences as valid. Sorry, what was this? What else did you say?
Yeah, how can we better support people with ADHD? Because ultimately, I suppose you're saying that they can go on to be adults with careers and all the rest of this stuff. It's like, I suppose, like, that, especially in children, it's that behaviour. It's there's an expression we use, which is our mental health might explain our behaviour, but it doesn't excuse it. So it's and the thing is that I suppose certain behaviours, they do need again controlling, or controlling is probably the wrong word, but guiding, gently shepherding to a different place. And it's like, are there ways to do that without in kind of invalidating the person's experience?
I think it's about a conversation. it's not about telling them what's right and what's wrong. Stop doing that. I think it's about letting them lead on their behavior. Like if you're talking about guiding, that's a discussion. That's about why something might be important. You know, a lot of neurodivergent people do not, like, very, very naturally question a lot of what they're told by society and how things should be done. And honestly, I think in a lot of ways, we're right. You know, like, I think we see through bullshit. How it's always been is not a good enough answer to most of us. So I'm thinking of a friend of mine from school who I reconnected with through TikTok, who talks about autism and raising his autistic son, which, you know, immediately I was like, oh God, you know, because autism parents can be like a thing. But I was delighted because every part of what he does and talks about, it's led by his son. You know, it's, what are you comfortable doing here? What, like, there is a discussion, it's a conversation, and they are not pressured into doing things that they feel uncomfortable with. And that's the thing, because I think as a society we treat children terribly anyway. Like, literally, I think kids are treated worse than dogs, right? Like, they're treated like you should be able to train them, but we don't like that they can talk back. And I think recognizing that this is a human who is having an experience, and even if it is annoying to you or disruptive, like, there is a reason for that behavior, and chastising them might not be the most useful way of changing it. If it needs to be changed, and really question whether something needs to be changed, because I think a lot of us worry about what others think, and we don't think about, is this actually harming anyone? Are they getting something positive from it? And then it really doesn't matter past that.
Yeah, I think the whole harming anybody, it's like we're programmed into thinking that it is harming this person if it's keeping them from, again, that narrow definition of fitting in society, or you know, behaving in a certain way or acting in a certain way. You know, we think, I suppose, like that, going back to what we talked about before with the executive dysfunction versus procrastination, it's like, when we see it as procrastination, it's like, is this harming anybody? And it's like, well, in reality, the only person it's probably harming is the individual, because as we said, with all the shame and the idea that by procrastinating you are in a way wrong. It's like, okay, if you get to that end point and the work is done and the work is still handed in on time, does it matter whether it was done the night before, or does it matter whether it was done 2 weeks before? And it's a case of, well, who's this affecting apart from the individual, whose stress levels are obviously rising, anxiety levels are rising as the deadline approaches more and more. And there are, like, we've always been told, do the thing. Like, do the thing is the way to deal with those stress levels, and it is for someone who is procrastinating, right? Do the uncomfortable thing, get that thing first, and you'll find that those people, like, they're like, oh, I did the thing, and it was right, and now I'm going to do that forever, and then we don't the next time around because we forgot or something. But that's one way of dealing with it. That way is talked about a lot. You know, it's like. There's been a very important recurring theme that from what we've spoken about this morning so far, which is compassion, like the compassionate way of give yourself permission to do it last minute then, and enjoy your time between now and the last minute. Like, decide yourself, I know that I always do this last minute, I'm going to do it the last minute, and more importantly, I'm going to accept that is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be honest. Personally, I am looking at ways to try and get a bit more stuff done before the last minute. But I mean, I think, understanding the reasons why. Like, the problem I have with, like, telling my brain we can get it done, is my brain is already doing that. It's already worked out that math, and that is actually part of the issue. Because I can go, oh, I really need to get this done, and my brain is going, you don't know, like, mate, you've been doing this for years. You're not. You're going to be fine. 4 hours before midnight, you'll get it done. Like, and that's not actually helpful. I am always going to be finishing stuff last minute, but I think there might be ways to make sure that it's not starting and finishing last minute.
Have you found any ways yet that work for you?
So I have sort of trained myself like a dog when it comes to writing. It's not working at the moment, actually, because I am angry. I've been stuck in a little anger cycle for the last week. But I use Pomodoro and white noise when I need to do some work, which has kind of trained me to just once I turn it on, like the app that I've got is both the clock and the white noise. I'll just do 15 minutes of work, and I over time I have trained myself to just do that. So that is useful.
Pomodoro.
But you do also have to remember to turn it on.
Yeah, I think it was. I'm sure it was you that first said this on one of your TikToks, and then I may have said it in a stream, which then in turn became one of my TikToks. But it was about the fact that like Trello for me was a big one. Like I loved using Trello, and that was because I quite liked the making of the boards and it's like a little pat on the back when I move something over to finished, you know. But the problem then is, okay, now remembering to do your planning or remembering to do your Trello is now the action that I don't do. And so like I'd gone from doing that, and then I was super hyper organized for like a month. And then I'm like, this is it. I've cracked it now. I'm never going back. It's always going to be this way. And I'm totally organized. And then I kind of fall out of love with using Trello, and that's and as a result, it's like I think it was you that said, the problem with organizational apps for people with ADHD is that we forget to use the organizational apps.
Yeah, well, I think it was if we had the executive function to remember to use our apps, we wouldn't need the apps.
That was it. Hey, look, you've got the executive function to remember exactly what you said.
I'm good at remembering what I said. Well, it's because I use captions on TikTok, and I'm really slow and bad at it. So I've heard every one of my TikToks about 1,000 times before it even goes out.
Yeah, I can't stand doing captions on them.
It's I made a promise to myself to be as accessible as possible, and then I got a new phone and it turned off auto captions, and for my new phone I get the 3-minute videos, but I don't get the auto captions anymore, and I'm furious.
Yeah. That's weird, because I don't get the auto captions at all, and I also don't have reels on Instagram.
What?
Exactly, don't have reels. Doesn't exist. I can watch other people's reels, but I can't create one.
That's so weird.
I know. And it's like, I just want to be lazy and efficient, and put all of my content just with one button. But yeah, the caption thing, I want mine to be more accessible. And someone brought I think one of your followers brought it for this, asking if there's going to be captions on this, and it's like the captions on Twitch are a little bit iffy and you need to be on Chrome, and I don't use Chrome, and then your person that is coming in, dialing in, needs to be on Chrome and needs to use an extension at their end as well, and it's not the greatest yet, but as soon as this goes to YouTube, within like an hour or whatever, it'll be fully captioned. So, but yeah, with TikTok, it takes me like an hour to do a TikTok with captions, or half an hour. And it's like, although there is a kind of quicker way around it, but TikTok weirdly hates it. Is if I edit the video in Premiere Pro for which you'll probably, if any clips from this will probably be done in that, because it's taken from here rather than taken from my phone. It's much quicker for me to do them in that and like just line them up with the text. But it's it's such a, but yeah, that was a full-on sidetrack off the back of the expression of the organizational apps, that if we had the executive function to use them, we wouldn't need them. And I think it was, it's not his quote, but Richard Nichols basically, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's got an amazing mental health podcast. He's a psychotherapist, and one of the quotes I got from his is that if the human mind was simple enough to be understood, it wouldn't be powerful. I'm not going to get this right now. It's like if the human mind would be, in order to be simple enough to be understood, wouldn't be powerful enough to understand itself, or something along those lines. It's like, so like of all what we don't know about the mind, it's like, it's in order for it to be simple enough to us to understand it, we'd need to advance to a much higher level to be able to. So it's a bit of a catch-22 when it comes to that. In terms of kind of moving to things like TikTok, what's the aim over there?
One of the things about my discovery and diagnosis and treatment was, a lot of people talk about ADHD meds as if they dull creativity. It was the exact opposite experience for me. Okay. All of a sudden, the ideas that I had could now be executed. And TikTok was just, I'd been on there for a while watching videos, like it's a dopamine app. But, I used to be a performer. I used to be a professional stand-up, and I've done acting, and I'm a writer. So TikTok's kind of all of those things at once. Like I can, for me, it is just a really fun way to be creative. And if I can do that, well, and I am just completely, my special interest, my hyperfixation, whatever language you want to use, is my own brain right now. So that's what I'm talking about. Like it's, yeah, like that. That's why there wasn't really an aim to any of the stuff I've done, really, other than if I don't put it into words and put it somewhere, then I'll just drive myself mad.
I wish I wasn't relating so much to every single one of your answers. There's I wrote a poem about social media addiction last year, because when the pandemic hit and my inability to be, because I used to, well, I am back there now on stages, but not for comedy, for like talking about this stuff, right? And as soon as that was gone, I was like, right, I need an outlet for that. And Twitch became an outlet for that. And then I started putting YouTube videos up and then like pushing all different forms of content, like thinking everyone's stuck in, this will be great. But then I got an almost body dysmorphic level of obsession with the numbers. And I have historically had body dysmorphia, so I knew what that was like. And it felt exactly the same looking at my numbers on social media. And not seeing them work in relation to the actual work I was doing but I would check over and over and over again these numbers like far too many times. And I wrote this poem about it, and I said, the problem is, it'd be so easy if I could just stop. And it's like, but actually I can't. To stay quiet for me and to stay off social media completely hurts me more. Actually, it hurts me more than it hurts me to be on it, because it hurts me more because I've got all those thoughts rattling around in my own head, and I'm just screaming into the void. I'm not even screaming anywhere. It's just literally rattling around in my own head, and I'm like, my kind of thing has always been, well, if I'm thinking this, then someone else must be. And maybe and I know that when I hear somebody else say something that I'm thinking out loud, it feels very validating. It feels good to know. I call it the double-edged sword. It's good and bad to know that someone else feels the same as you do. Because on one hand, it's good to know that you're not alone. On the other hand, it's like, oh, damn, someone else. Because I don't like how I feel. It's about 20% of the time now, but it used to be a lot higher than that. And it's the tough thing about these social media stuff is that, it's about finding an outlet. And the outlets used to be I suppose what the outlets used to be, maybe a diary or a blog as it was originally, but now it's this strange kind of thing of once your outlet has hit 100 people, you don't like it hitting 50. Once your outlet has hit 1,000 people, you don't like it hitting 100. It's like,
yeah. I mean, I think I really relate to that. I think for me, like, if you want to know how well I am, I mean, if I'm not well, I'm either not on Twitter or I'm there all the time. You want me, like, clearly I've checked in a few times today, but I'm not, like, living here. That's a good
that's a good day.
Spot.
Oh my god, I feel so seen. I call it desperate or despondent. No, wait a minute. Yeah, desperate or despondent. The desperate is I'm here a lot. I'm typing as everything I can put out as much as humanly possible because I need the engagement. And the despondent is fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How do you deal with that personally then?
What the despondent?
Well, do you recognize it yourself? Like, do you recognize? Okay, I know I'm posting a lot today, or I know that I don't want to be here today, and do you ever kind of like try and counteract that, or is it something you just give it with compassion and let it be, or is it something you sit and torture yourself about?
So I went through quite a bad patch recently, where I think it was noticed that I was on Twitter last. But like, so it was one of the things I've sort of done is I've started doing my ADHD is tweets daily. I just try and like put one of them out a day.
Yeah.
And if like I'm all right, I'll be around for the day, and if I'm not all right, I'll be around too much all day. But like in those despondent things, it's like, well, I've got to do that. Right, like, so I'll it's like a thing to do, and it's and sometimes it can make me feel better about it because people like it, or they respond to it, they say nice things, or riff on it, and then you get to actually see the community. But then I feel guilty because when I'm going through a patch like that, I'm not engaging with other people's posts. So then I'm like, oh, do they just see me as some guy who wants to? And it's a whole thing. But,
yeah, I know that one too.
Yeah. But it's I think for me, social media is inherently toxic. Well, not just for me, I think for humans. But you can use it in the best way for you, and it can be positive for you. Like, I have curated my feed. Like, I didn't know you could. Like, I never look at the trending things. Like, my friend was like, I don't like Twitter because you've all got to try it. And I'm like, I don't know what anything that has trended on Twitter for years is.
Yeah.
But I'm a football fan, but I see no football posts on Twitter because I don't like the people who talk about football on Twitter. And so I have developed that, and you can, and that's why I like Twitter in particular. I think it's much more curatable than a lot of other things. Instagram I don't like because it's hard to engage. The notifications are bad, but you can turn off things like likes, and so you can actually make it less of a compulsive whatever. And TikTok is like, I don't know, TikTok is Twitter, but with video, is what I think. Like it does actually have good curation abilities. But then sometimes you'll watch something that annoys you. You'll like hate watch something, and then the next like 10 videos will be that, and it's like, no, I've made a mistake.
Yeah, the weirdest thing for me about TikTok is the fact that it doesn't give you your followers. First of all, it gives you the For You page. Like, this is what we think you will like. Yeah. Here, you can swipe over to what we've told us that you like, but here's a load of stuff that we think you will like. And
I kind of like that though, because it's discovery, like.
Yeah. But I discover so much crap. My TikTok is becoming quite nicely curated now. And like I hated it at first, and I thought I actually genuinely at one point thought there's no good content on there whatsoever. And now there's a bunch of things that I do really love watching, and yours is one of them.
Yeah. I think what I like about TikTok is that it pushes out. Twitter, people who already follow you need to push you out.
Yeah.
Instagram is some sort of random hashtag game of I don't know. I think they roll dice or something. But like TikTok, as I understand it, is sort of it's pushed out to people who use similar hashtags as you. If enough of them like it, it gets pushed out to more people. So like, your first video could go big if you've done it well, and it like it's more natural, I think.
Yeah. Or the only
but it's
thing
also
that could
it's
ever
also
go
blind luck.
Totally. This is the locus of control, right?
Yeah.
But I've found the soiree into TikTok to be quite a frustrating one, and I think the only reason I went over there is somewhat sort of weird content creator FOMO, like, oh, this, and it's been validated this morning. We've had 2 people come in and say they came in from TikTok this morning. So that's been validated today. That's 2 more people come in than would have if I'd not put it there. But that being said, one of my close friends, he's an Irish streamer. He does mental health stuff, but he was literally just put this joke up about I don't want to say Coolock's where he's from, but like Leitrim, I believe, was the county. He said it's like an absolute dump. It's blah 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 blah. And he put this out as a sort of jokey TikTok, and it went to like 100,000 people or something. And at which point he got 140 new followers in the space of 10 minutes on coming into while he was live streaming. Oh, it was all abuse. It's like, oh yes, it's worked. It's brought a load of new people into my stream who all want to shout abuse at me because of the fact that I slagged off their home county. And it's like it goes back to that thing that you said about the person who retweeted your ADHD writing styles tweet. It's like their haters or became your haters for a moment, or it's like someone who dislikes this person is now disliking you by virtue of the fact that you were retweeted by them, and it's guilty by association, I guess. But it's an interesting thing about how social media works, but in particular with Twitter. I find on Twitter it's so much easier to engage with a person's tweet once you know the person, like, and that's it's very difficult to, because like, especially like yourself being an ex-comedian and stuff, and there's a guy Papa Glitch who used to be a comedian, Chris Purchase, and he's so sarcastic and like he would be in comedy, like his comedic tone comes through in all of his tweets. And if you don't know anything about him, it's like you kind of read a lot of what he says as being serious, and that's the issue I've always had with Twitter, is the fact that you don't get tone, you don't get you just get words. I think
the problem with all social media apps is that they reward controversy, and so I'm trying to not engage in it, like actively, even though it will penalize, I imagine. But things like the quote tweet where you drag someone, or you call on your people to go, oh, look at this fucking awfulness, which I think is especially awful in mental health communities. Yeah. Same with duets and stitching on TikTok. I think, you know what, no matter how bad that thing that you've seen is, the only thing you are doing is encouraging a lot of people with impulsivity, emotional dysregulation, other, mental illness, to gang up on one person with a mental illness. And like, that is never a good way to deal with that situation, even if what they have said is utterly toxic. So I'm trying to refrain from that sort of behavior, even though
I caught myself doing that at the beginning of the year with I can't even remember who it was. It was a musician that I'd never really heard of, but apparently had 140,000 followers or whatever. And basically they said any day. The quote, the tweet was, "Any day spent being unhappy is a day that you've wasted." And I was like, I'm like, okay, thanks, everyone that's unhappy. And I've literally retweeted it saying, I say, great, you've just everyone that's already feeling unhappy on Twitter now, that's just seen that, is now feeling like completely and utterly invalidated, or they're now feeling extra guilt and extra shame on top of the fact that, and blah blah. And I hit the retweet, and then 2 seconds later, I'm like, this isn't what I'm about, and I deleted it. And I was just like, because I actually told my community in the January this year, I'm like, please just stop me if you ever see me doing that, because I disagree with about 80% of what Matt Haig says on social media, you see. So this is him being like the biggest mental health writer in the world. It's like, I'm like, damn it, I really wish that I didn't disagree with 80% of what the person who's got the most eyes on him for mental health in the whole world says. But like, so I have to stop myself, because what you've said there is bob on. It's like what are you doing? It's like, I always used to have a problem with people just kind of like just have retweeting something with the word "this," even in a positive way, right? And because what I always saw that as is, oh, I think this, but someone else more important than me thinks this, so pay more attention. And it's like, I don't know. It's social media has tried to force us into a evolution, or at least a change in communication that should have, could have taken years and years and years and years, and now we just speak to each other in emojis.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, I'm a language nerd. I think that's kind of cool. Like, I think language has always evolved and changed, and the odd thing about social media is that it has turned text into speech, because they evolved independently largely, and now they are the same thing, and that is changing punctuation use, and that is changing spelling, and that is changing. Why is it bad to have emojis? Right? Mm-hmm. Were the Egyptians wrong in how they wrote?
No. Plus, emojis do transcend language. Yeah,
it's not an unusual, when you look at the history of sort of human communication, that sort of thing is not unusual, and I just think it's really fascinating, and I sort of hate all the grammar spelling dweebs that you see on the internet, because I'm just like, it's not a job interview, mate. Like, they're talking and you understood. Shut up.
I think when you say it's not a job interview, though, this actually does tie back into when we were saying, does the behaviour need changing and does it need correcting? Is that the person is thinking, well, I need to correct them now so that they are right when they do the job interview.
Thing is, though, with that stuff, you can DM them, you can do a nice comment. You don't have to be a wanker about it, and most people are wankers about it.
That is true.
It's only after you call them out for that they're like, oh, don't you want to know? I just want to, and it's like, I don't think that was your intention.
Is there anything else that you wanna add on? Well, anything we've said or any other part about mental health before we wrap this up?
I think I have a poor working memory. I think it's about compassion, and if you don't experience the other things that other people do, that is the one piece of advice actually I'd give to like neurotypical people or people who aren't. So it's, if you ever find yourself thinking, oh, I feel like that sometimes, or everyone does that, or that, shut up. Just accept the knowledge that this person like has a legitimate medical condition that is defined and diagnosable, and that your experience, if you are well, is not the same. Like, regardless of how the words they have used to describe it, they're not talking about what you once had when you were tired. I don't, Yeah,
definitely. I mean, compassion. We'll go back to it one more time because it has come up an absolute bunch of times today. And I suppose that is both compassion to other people and also compassion to yourself. If you do have any neurodivergence, our entire community on Twitch, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, that's the one. Our entire community on Twitch is called Diversity, which is short for neurodiversity, because basically most of us are. We neurotypicals are allowed. We let them in, but we give them a different coloured beach towel, so we can stay away. No, I'm joking. But that's what we're all about, and compassion's a huge part of it. But we so often, it's like the quotes that are out there is like, everyone that you know is going through a battle. Everyone you know is going through a battle that you know nothing about. Be kind always. It's like, okay, but you're also going through a battle that you know everything about. Be kind always to yourself. It's like, it's funny how we're finding it easier to be compassionate to other people, imagining what they might be going through, than we find it easy to be compassionate to ourselves, knowing exactly what we're going through.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a bombshell. But where can everybody find you on social media? I think I've still got your TikTok on Control V. Let's have a little look.
Oh, look at that.
There you are. There's your TikTok, and it's just Geraint. Did I get it right that time?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's Geraint works. I'm going back into an English accent for works, because if I don't, I'll go into the wrong part. I mean, I'll go into the wrong bit of Welsh, and I have this thing that I love accents. They're one of my first obsessions in life. I love sounds and recreating them. And my ever first stimming was never with stuff. It was I beatboxed before beatboxing was even a thing. I just like. But I copy accents. But I used to always think I was quite good at it. But apparently, everyone from my community tells me that if I'm doing their accent, I'm terrible. But if I'm doing anyone else's accents, they're great.
That's usually how it works. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know the nuances of your own accent, don't you? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there where are the best places for people to find you other than TikTok?
Well, so there's Twitter, and I am also on Instagram, where I do little graphic-y things. And they're all Geraint Works. They're all the same handle. And my blog is geraint.works. So it's very simple as soon as you learn how to spell my unusual Welsh name.
Yeah, it's spelt nothing like how it's pronounced.
It is actually pronounced phonetically in Welsh. Just switch your language bias there, mate. So.
Sorry. Well, yeah, so going back to my wife from the very beginning, so is hers, because hers is spelt with a backwards N in Russian, which is an E, which is a double E. So instead of I, it should be E. So yeah, it is often spelt, as you say, phonetically in the language that it was designed in, funnily enough. Like mine's spelt phonetically in the language it was designed in, Hebrew. Right, well, thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you a bit more and having a good chat about these things. Although, oh my God, I've never felt more seen by the answers another guest has ever given on this whole podcast. So yeah, I think it's definitely time for me to bloody formalise that diagnosis, because either that or bipolar and ADHD have far too much overlap.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't need a diagnosis, right? Is the thing. I believe in self-diagnosis. The only if you can't access a diagnosis, it doesn't mean you aren't.
Yeah.
And medication isn't for everyone. I use it and I find it helpful, but that's really the main reason for.
That's actually the main reason I want to try and get a diagnosis, because I actually want to try and see if it can, because I am going through, and the last year's probably highlighted it way more than for me, because before this I had appointments to go out to, I had talks to turn up for. I still have talks to turn up for. They're just fewer and further between. When I turn up for a talk now, I turn around in the chair this way and switch a camera on, and then an hour later I'm back, and so as a result I'm then back staring at my computer, whereas historically I'd be driving home for 3 hours from somewhere and I wasn't questioning why I wasn't up to date with my emails or my creative projects while I was driving home. That was just, I don't have the time, I don't have the ability right now. But it really is now, I either have too much to do with too many ideas whilst I'm doing it, or all the time, and I think all the ideas suck, or I can't do them. So it's been very it's been a tricky 12 months, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure.
And that, so as a result, I would like to actually, I will give it a whirl, and see how the medication side of it goes, because I'm definitely not adverse to trying medication. I've had to try various ones for bipolar throughout my life, so. And that's, the type of advice that I give to everybody else, which is always, I can't advise on medication, so go and speak to a medical professional who can.
Indeed.
Right, well, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch you soon. I'll let you know when this is up on YouTube as well. All of that's way behind schedule right now because of everything we've talked about today. Everybody, can we have some exclamation mark love, exclamation mark hype, exclamation mark thirsty if you want